What if I told you that on a cold November night in 1995, a bus full of passengers vanished into thin air, only to be found days later in a place it could never reach, with bodies that defied all logic? Welcome to Sherlock Mode. November 14th, 1995. Beijing, China. The city sleeps under a blanket of darkness, but somewhere in the shadows, a mystery is about to unfold that will haunt China for decades to come. Our story begins at the Yuanminghuan bus terminal, where the last bus of Route 375 prepares for its final journey to Xiangshan, also known as the Fragrant Hills. At this lonely bus stop, only two people wait in the midnight chill: an elderly person, wrapped in a heavy coat, and a calm young man, both unaware that they are about to witness something that will change their lives forever. The bus arrives with a gentle hiss of brakes. Bus number 375. The driver, tired from a long day, opens the doors. Inside, there's only a female ticket collector, creating an atmosphere of eerie quietness. The elderly passenger chooses a seat near the front, while the young man settles a few rows behind. The bus begins its journey through the sleeping city, its engine humming a lonely tune through empty streets. For several minutes, everything seems normal. The bus moves steadily through Beijing's quiet neighborhoods, passing darkened windows and empty sidewalks. But then, something unusual happens. The driver notices two shadowy figures by the roadside, waving frantically at the approaching bus. The driver slows down and brings the bus to a stop. The doors open with their familiar whoosh, and three men step aboard. But something is terribly wrong with these passengers. Two men are supporting a third man between them, holding him up by his shoulders. The man in the middle hangs his head low, his face hidden in shadow. The man in the middle appears disheveled and lifeless, his clothes torn and dirty. No one can see his face, and he makes no sound as his companions guide him to the back of the bus. An uncomfortable silence fills the bus. Even the engine seems to run quieter now, as if the vehicle itself senses something is not right. The elderly passenger starts to feel uneasy. Something about those three men doesn't seem right, but they can't quite put their finger on what it is. Minutes pass in this strange, heavy silence. The bus continues its route, but the atmosphere has changed completely. Something feels very, very wrong. Suddenly, the elderly passenger does something unexpected. They stand up and march over to the young man, pointing an accusing finger. "You stole my wallet," the elderly person shouts, their voice cutting through the silence like a knife. The young man looks confused and shocked. "I didn't steal anything," the young man protests, standing up to defend himself. But the elderly person won't listen, becoming more and more angry. The argument grows louder and more heated. The driver, concerned about the disturbance, watches them through his mirror, unsure of what to do. "Check his pockets," the elderly person demands. "Search him. He has my wallet." The young man looks around helplessly, not understanding why this is happening. The driver has had enough. He pulls the bus over to the side of the road and opens the doors. "Get off," he orders both of them. "I won't have fighting on my bus." Both the elderly person and the young man are forced to leave the bus. They stand on the empty street, watching as bus 375 disappears into the night, its red taillights fading into darkness. As soon as the bus is gone, something amazing happens. The elderly person's anger completely disappears, replaced by a look of relief and gratitude. "Thank you," the elderly person says to the confused young man. "I just saved both our lives." The young man stares in complete bewilderment. "What are you talking about?" asks the young man. "You accused me of stealing. Why are you thanking me?" The elderly person takes a deep breath before answering. "Those three passengers who got on the bus," the elderly person whispers, their voice trembling with fear. "They were not alive. They had no feet. They were floating." The young man feels a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean they had no feet? That's impossible." But the elderly person shakes their head sadly. "I saw them clearly when they got on the bus. Where their feet should have been, there was nothing. They were floating just above the floor of the bus." The two survivors decide they must report this strange incident to the police. They walk through the empty streets until they find the nearest police station. But when they tell their story to the officers, no one believes them. The police think they're either drunk or mentally ill. They are sent away with warnings not to waste police time. The next morning brings shocking news. The bus company makes an official announcement that sends ripples of fear through Beijing. Last night, the final bus for Route 375 vanished completely. The bus, along with its driver and female ticket collector, has disappeared without a trace. Suddenly, the police remember the two people who came to them with the strange story. They quickly track down the elderly person and the young man for questioning. Now the authorities take their story seriously. The two witnesses are interviewed by police and even appear on television news, telling their incredible tale to a shocked public. For 3 long days, search teams look everywhere for bus 375. They check every possible route, every garage, every place a bus could hide. But they find nothing. Then, on the 3rd day, comes the discovery that would make this mystery even more terrifying and impossible to explain. Bus 375 is found at the bottom of a water reservoir, about 100 kilometers away from its intended destination of Fragrant Hills. Inside the bus, investigators make a gruesome discovery. 3 badly decomposed bodies are found, presumably the driver, ticket collector, and one of the mysterious passengers. But this discovery raises more questions than it answers. How did the bus travel 100 kilometers when it only had enough fuel for its regular route? When investigators check the fuel tank, they make a horrifying discovery. Instead of gasoline, the tank is filled with fresh blood. The medical examination of the bodies reveals another impossible detail. The corpses are far too decomposed for just 3 days. Even in hot weather, bodies don't decompose this quickly naturally. Security cameras around the reservoir are checked thoroughly. Every entrance and exit is examined, but the cameras show no sign of the bus ever entering the area. To this day, the mystery of bus 375 remains unsolved. No one can explain how the bus reached that reservoir, what happened to its passengers, or who those mysterious floating figures really were. Let us analyze this mystery like Sherlock Holmes would. What clues do we have, and what could possibly explain these impossible events? First, we have 2 reliable witnesses who saw the floating passengers. Both independently reported the same impossible detail about missing feet. Second, the bus was found in a location it couldn't possibly reach with its available fuel, and that fuel had been mysteriously replaced with blood. Third, the bodies decomposed far too quickly, suggesting either supernatural forces or some unknown scientific phenomenon. Some believe this was a supernatural encounter with spirits or ghosts. Others think it might have been an elaborate hoax or cover-up of some kind. Could the elderly person have been somehow connected to the mysterious passengers? Did they know something would happen and create the fight to save both their lives? Or perhaps this entire story is an urban legend that grew from a real but much simpler incident, transformed by fear and imagination into something supernatural. What we do know is that this story has become one of China's most famous unsolved mysteries, told and retold for nearly 30 years. Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, the mystery of Bus 375 reminds us that some questions may never have answers, and some stories will forever remain in the realm of the unknown. If you enjoyed unraveling this mystery, like and subscribe to Sherlock Mode.